Titcombe. Welcome to UKOCR. We'll call this YouTube channel because I'm going to put on a podcast. We're going to do it on YouTube instead. Welcome, mate. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a busy day. So I've just come back from the London Marathon and, well, just literally rolled in the house about 20 minutes ago. So yeah, I'm feeling quite tired, but yeah, it's been a good day.
How was the race today at the London Marathon?
Do you know what? It was really good. Like the weather was pretty much spot on. Like it was a bit cold when we started, and then sort of as the day went on, the sun came out, and it was just almost like really spot on running weather. As the day got on, it did get a little bit warm. So the guys that were sort of taking 5 hours ish plus, they would have been out in the full heat, which would have been quite a struggle. But I think I got, because obviously I did it a bit quicker, I managed to escape most of the direct sun.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 hours, 36, 26, was it?
29, yeah.
So,
wow. And I, like the intention, I wasn't going out to try and chase that time. I went out as like, if I get under the qualification times for the championship, I'll be happy. So I was aiming for 2:40, and that was it. And then from that, it just kind of, I got into a rhythm, got to the half marathon point at 1 hour 17 and a half. So it's way under the target time. And I was like, okay, I'm still feeling pretty good here. And I just sort of, I backed off a little bit and sort of just got the heart rate to settle down a little bit. And then just somehow just ended up still sticking at sort of 6 minute mile pace, running 3:45 to 3:50 per K. And the pace just stuck. And then the last sort of couple of kilometers, you get the massive crowds going as you go past Parliament and then in towards the Mall. So you just kind of feel yourself getting dragged along by the crowd. And yeah, cross the line for a new PB, which is also pretty good.
So a new PB a week after becoming age group world champion for OCR. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's when I was building up to this week to actually running the London Marathon, I said, no, I'm just going to go out and enjoy it and spend time with it. And like I went for a couple of recovery runs sort of between sort of Tuesday and Friday, and I just thought, I'm actually not feeling great. My legs were still quite tired, but just woke up this morning and I was absolutely fine. Started running and nothing hurt, and I was like, brilliant! I can actually get into a good rhythm here. But yeah, after becoming world champion, it's kind of I didn't really expect to do it myself. So
let's talk about the OCRWC. Go out there. What was your expectations going out?
So I've been working a lot on the running side of it because I know that the Worlds compared to the Euros is a lot more hilly. It's a lot more running based, and especially at Stratton Mountain because they used a very similar course to what they had at the NORAM Champs. Yep. So I knew it was going to be hilly. So I said, if I get my running sorted, and I was training for the Great North Run anyway. So my running was kind of already spot on. I've got good obstacle fitness sort of as a baseline anyway.
Yeah.
So I knew that I'd have sort of a fight within sort of to get, especially in the top five. But as I sort of started during the race, it was clearly evident that I was doing quite well pretty much from the get-go. I led pretty much from after the first major climb, you got up to a rope traverse. And from that point, I was in the lead in my group. And because it's a mass start, if you finish first, you know you've got that first place. Yeah. So rather than the time trial format, which they have on the 3K, you can judge it a lot more easier.
Did you go out hot, or did you want to go out and lead, or was it just your pace?
I sat back at the first sort of initial climb up to the sloped wall behind a Spanish athlete, and I just thought, if I'm happy, I'm comfortable with the pace I'm at, I'll just sit on his shoulder for a little bit and just sort of see how the race goes. Like we ended up sort of running in, I don't know the pace we were running, but I felt pretty good running at the pace I was.
Yeah.
And like not having to struggle too much. So I was like, okay, let's push the pace on a little bit. And as soon as I just pushed it just that little bit, just to get that just out of that comfort zone just a little bit more, he just dropped off straight away. And I was like, oh, okay. So let's just keep the hammer down on this first initial climb, get these obstacles done out the way, fly down the descent towards Skull Valley, because Skull Valley was really early on this year in the race.
Yeah.
And then got over that and moved on to a carry. And as I completed the carry, he was just finishing the rope climb. So I'd already made 40 seconds plus on that section, just the descent and those two obstacles. So I was sort of that got me in the mindset of, right, I've got a lead here already. Let's just keep it as it is and then see what happens. And yeah, just over the course, the lead got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I ended up actually winning by quite a big margin.
Well, when you come through Skull Valley, you said you pick the carry up, you saw that 40-second lead. Did you think to yourself at that point, I want to push it further, or did you think I want to ease it off, or did you just maintain that comfortable pace that you were happy at?
Yeah, I was kind of more just in that borderline, pushing that comfort zone, just out of it a little bit, because I was under the impression that 40-second gap was like staying.
Yeah.
But after you did Skull Valley, you did Skull Valley rope climb. It was like a farmer's carry. You did snake pit, which is like loads and loads of ropes, and then moved on to trapeze, which is just a ring to a few bars. They're quite spaced apart, but if you get good swing, you can just sort of fly through it. And there was a really long climb up through some woodland. And as I got to the top of it, it was a really sharp right turn. And I just looked down the hill and I couldn't see him at all.
Wow.
So I was like, I'd already made probably by that point, maybe a minute again on him. So I'm a minute and a half at this point and I couldn't see him. I was just like, well, if I just keep at this pace, I'm happy with how the running's going. Let's just continue this and see what happens. And yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
The rest is history, as they say. So
the rest is history. What was you're coming back down into the event village? First of all, I'm going to assume that the really big climb that was it about 400, about 1.2?
Yeah, 1.2 kilometers with I think the average average gradient on just that climb alone was 35 degrees.
Did you power walk that, or was you walking?
Yeah, I powered. So I ran kind of little intermittent bits. There were tiny little bits which were not as steep, and I just shuffled those. But yeah, it was with that climb, like it's just a case of getting to the top. Sort of, it doesn't matter how quickly you do it, just as long as you get to the top, you can just then worry about the descent afterwards.
And were you running out quite early I'm sure you were running out quite early in the day, weren't you?
No, I was actually midday.
Oh, was you midday? All right.
So the age group 25 to 29 males started at 12:15. Wow. And at this point, the sun had come out on the course. So I was debating, we turned up in the morning and it was still really grey and quite cold. And I was like, do I wear a base layer? Do I not? I'll take it with me just in case. And then as the day got on and seeing sort of the rest of the UK athletes sort of go ahead, I was like, right, don't take the base layer. You'll be cold on the start line, but just suffer a little bit at the start and then just get on with it. And by the time I got up the mountain, the sun was fully out and I was like, yeah, glad I didn't bring it. So
I get that. I'm like that. I always sort of run hot and the sun's out. It's a nightmare. And when you come back into the event village, then you're got these last 7, 8 obstacles left in there. Who was in the event village to cheer you on?
So I had Claire Rosser, sort of. She was working with sort of Katie Joyce and a couple of others to do the live streams for the UKOCR. She was actually out on the course at the time, so I think it was Katie Joyce that was videoing for the Instagram live at that point.
Yeah. And
then there were a couple of other sort of UK athletes who had finished and were cheering me on. But weirdly, Graham Roberts and Ryan Atkins sat by drop zone. And apparently, I don't know if this rumor is true or not, but apparently there was a conversation between Ryan and Graham as I went through saying that guy should run elite.
Right.
as I came through, and I don't know if that's 100% confirmed, but that's a rumor that I heard from a couple of people. So
I mean, what time? 1:48:15 was that? That was your next time, weren't it?
Yeah, so that would have put me 16th elite.
Yeah.
Or I think 16th overall out of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14 minutes ahead of second place.
Yeah. So
that's a big.
I mean, there's yeah. So as I said, and it wasn't even the Spanish guy ended up finishing third. So he obviously must have had a couple of dramas on some of the obstacles or whatever, because I think it was an American that finished second. So
John Pless, I've got the results. Yeah. John Pless came second. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the Spanish guy third. Yeah. So he must have just had sort of either tired himself out on the climbs or maybe just had a drama at the obstacles, because those two are quite close. I think they're only a couple of minutes apart. But then you can see there's like it's basically me, a massive gap to second, and then everyone after second is kind of within sort of 2-3 minutes of each other.
Yeah, it looks like it was such a close race. You know, like I say, you first, John second, but then, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, the Spanish guy, because it's not going to pronounce it for me. But between him and the rest, it was super close for for positions on that. Was there any time out on the course where you struggled? Was there any obstacles, or had you trained well enough for them?
So the obstacles themselves are quite. It's a bit of a weird one, and like everyone was saying, oh, they've got the 2014 rig in from the beginning of the Worlds, and I was like, oh, is that going to be a bit difficult? But I think the way that UK obstacle racing has come over the last few years, back then we would have looked at that rig and gone, oh my God, that looks impossible. Whereas now people can fly over it absolutely no problems, just because we've been experienced to the level of racing that they do for the Europeans and for the Worlds. And like our sort of baseline as UK obstacle racers, our obstacle fitness, as you could say, has gone absolutely massive. And like you've got people such as Rob Border, Mark Dickson, the guys that can just fly over rigs and muscle their way through rigs as if it's nothing now. And like, but back then that would have been an absolute sort of band taker for quite a lot of people. But like for me, the only obstacles I struggled with was more the simpler ones of trying to do them quickly. Like Skull Valley, I threw through the rigs. The low rig almost got me, but I managed to save myself because I did a massive swing to the bell and just about got it before my feet touched the ground.
Right.
And then, yeah, it's like the simple ones, like, well, not so simple, but Gibbons, I struggled a bit because I missed the hold. Right. So I had to do a couple of swings to get the hold, to get the piece back in, so I could then swing through to the bell. Doing the force 5 over and under, I almost came off when I did my transition to flip back over at the end. And the sort of the marshals are being quite strict on sort of people touching the scaffolding. So it was making sure that you weren't doing that, paying attention to the rule books and stuff like that. And the only other one that I found sort of a little bit more challenging was the Stairway 3.0, because it had quite a sort of a big chunky bar hold as you were transitioning up. Right. So it was just getting your hands in the right position that you can then grab to the ring to swing through and then get down. So, but overall, I think that sort of my obstacle sort of styles and sort of fitness with that course actually did really well. I passed everything first time, so I know it's good. So yeah, I think that, like I said, the level of sort of racing as it is now in the sort of the UK compared to the Euros, it's just two completely different races. But
yeah,
but like I said, like because we've been sort of, especially UK athletes, sort of going out to do the OCR series, racing in Italy, Holland, places in Germany as well, and doing toughest. It's like that. You come to the World and you go, it's actually not as difficult as it could be. So.
You think we've got a big advantage that we go? There's some of the Danish racing events, some of the Danish events, and the ones in the Europe where they are serious obstacles. You know, I mean, obstacles that are probably far too hard for it to go to the World. You know, I remember seeing, and I can't remember what the race it was now, but it was a European race, and the obstacles were just looked so tough, and it was literally rig after rig after rig, and it was a 15K race.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get the chance to go out there, you know, the UK scene gets a chance to go out there and do these and potentially fail them while they're out there, but then come back over here, go down to like Rumble, PT Barn, OPP, and all of these other, and that's just to name a few, and I'm sorry if I'm not named you, listeners, when you listen to this, but we have got so many gyms and fitness centers now that are specializing in this. It makes it much easier for us to transition into events like the Worlds. And I was speaking to Louise and Mark and Barry earlier, and they were saying very, very similar, that they've trained so hard that they didn't necessarily find the obstacles easy, but they found that they were proficient enough to get past them all.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the same point. and that's how I felt as well going through the world's course. I think it's because we've been experienced and sort of kind of up to the level of where you see these European athletes who are absolutely destroying these rigs that are upwards of 10 to 15 meters long, where you're hanging upside down for close to a minute and a half if you're good, and then 2 to 2.5 minutes if you're sort of not as proficient. I mean, for someone like sort of Leon or Jesse De Hare, the guys that race competitively in elite, in high standard of European races, like their obstacle fitness is just insane. And they come to the world where it's mainly about the running. And like the guys that are winning the races are the guys that sort of spend their lives running up and down the mountains. So it's kind of two completely different styles of obstacle racing. And I think we do get the better end of it, knowing that we do harder obstacle races in Europe. The UK scene itself, not so much, but like going out doing the OCR series races, like they're just another level. Whereas going to America, and then you got Spartan, a few kind of other brand races, and then just not up to that sort of ridiculously high standard. So yeah, I think it's definitely shown over the last couple of years that the UK scene has improved massively. So
100%. Do you think, you know, you talked about you came up the woods, you turned around, you saw you got a huge lead. Do you think you could have potentially pushed harder and maybe even beaten 128? You know, I'm thinking more like you say you were 16th in the world. That was 16th in the world time. You know, do you think you could have pushed harder?
I think I was pretty much on the limit,
right,
when I was doing it. So on one of the climbs that you had going up towards Gibbons, which wasn't a steep climb and it was on a tarmac path, but it was runnable. And I got to the top of Gibbons, and I even had to take just a couple of sort of slow right down just to catch my breath a little bit just before I got onto the obstacle. And that just kind of shows that I am sort of just balancing on that limit as such. And like when I came down into the event village, and you've got, when you in the course, you ran down to Valkyrie, down a massive descent, literally did Valkyrie, did 180, and you were straight back up the same ascent. And that was tough. And then you went around, dropped down towards, it was like one of those old wire ladders that they had, but it was quite caving sort of low ladders to the floor. Yeah, like the caving ladders. And they had one of those. And then you drop the descent again straight into Skitch, and then drop straight down again into Canyon and Drop Zone.
Yeah. And
you were sort of that kind of sort of style of racing is what you don't get in Europe, because Europe is flat. And that's why it's like almost the hills are on like another separate obstacle. But yeah, it's just.
I take my hat off you. Have you? We talked about Barry earlier on. Barry's been stopped in the local supermarket, and someone saying, "Oh, you're like an AG world champion," and that was someone who knew. Have you had any bit of fame like that that's happened since you've come back?
Well, surprisingly, I was actually at the London Marathon today. I got collared at about mile 24 by a friend of mine who I've not seen since college.
Yeah.
And he just randomly shouted my name out, and I looked around and I pointed at him. I was like, "What are you doing here?" And then, yeah, I spoke to him afterwards, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, man, I saw your post. Congratulations, you're age group world champion, aren't you?" And I was just like, "Yeah," because obviously he'd been looking at the Instagram posts. But yeah, I haven't seen him since college, and that was one of the first things he said to me. So that was quite sort of takes you back a little bit of where someone comes up to you and says like, "You're a world champion." You're like, yeah, I am a world champion, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And for world champion and everything else, but you're actually fighting for the UK championship in the UKOCR series. We've got 2 races left.
Yeah.
Am I going to get a sneak preview? Are you heading down to Battle of Lansdowne?
I am, yes.
Oh.
So I'm marshalling at Spartan next week, helping out with the European Championships. I'm with Claire Rosser, and then I'm running the super on the Sunday with my brother, so that's going to be just a super slow, go out, have a laugh, and just sort of show my brother sort of a bit more of a different side of the obstacle racing, because he's done like some old races. He did Nuts. He's done Muscle Acre before they went bust. He's never actually done a Spartan race. So this is going to be his first experience. So we're going to take it nice and chilled, and we're going to use it as that sort of obstacle recovery run, if you can call it such a thing. And then it will be getting ready for Battle of Lansdowne, which I heard is going to be quite a tough course from what I've seen online and sort of heard people talking about it. So
I think people are going to be slightly surprised by it. I think, there's a lot of people looking at it and thinking it's an independent OCR. They're not really expecting a great deal from it. Knowing Jamie and the race director, I think there's going to be a few shocks for people out there. So, yeah. Dan, thank you for joining me. Do you want to give a quick shout out to anyone? I know you want to give a shout out to Claire, but anyone else, and that give a shout out to them all?
So Katie Joyce, Libby, the guys that were filming for sort of the UKOCR pages at the Worlds. It was fantastic to have you guys there. Shout outs to Becky and Das. They ran the London Marathon today. Both absolutely smashed it. Das wasn't feeling 100%, but he still got an amazing time of 2 hours 44.
Wow.
Another shout out is to my brother and his girlfriend, who came all the way up just to watch me zip past about the mile 25 and then meet me at Horse Cars Praise afterwards. And I was fortunate enough to get let into Horse Cars Parade, the actual building itself, to get a bit of food and a bit of recovery, because being in the military, we got access to that, which was really, really good. So they literally turned up there, watched me finish, said well done, and then they went, and like they said, I'm going to be taking him out on his first obstacle Spartan race next week, so he's in for a bit of a shock.
Amazing.
And then just last one is also shout out to my mum, and she did her first ever marathon today.
So, she went to London Marathon as well?
She did the London Marathon as well, and she did her first ever marathon. Took her almost over 6 hours, but she still did it, and it's absolutely amazing. Someone who's 50, I want to get this wrong, 50.
No. Well, we'll leave it at there.
Maybe,
Don't tell
but
everyone.
we'll see. It's fine. She'll listen to this and she'll probably just say, "Oh, you shouldn't have said anything," but it's fine. But she's absolutely smashed it today. So yeah, super proud of my mum for getting out and doing that.
Absolutely, man. Dan, thank you very much for joining me.
Not a problem, man. Thanks very much.